Everybody, join me in welcoming to Champions Material, Rob Potchak. Come on in, brother.
All right.
What's going on, man?
What's up, dude?
All right, how you doing, man?
I am good. I am good,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sit on down.
I'm rocking the Dark Knight Returns.
Let me see what you got going on over there, man.
Got a little Frank Miller action.
Ugh.
So.
Nasty. All right, man. So let's go ahead and get into this, man. Let's look ahead to what's going on with Marvel and DC in 2021. And we'll start with DC. We got the Snyder Cut around the corner. We'll see what happens with the new Batman movie. But overall, what's your big picture take as far as what you've seen, what you know going into it, and how do you feel about it?
Well, there's a lot of mixed feelings about Wonder Woman.
Yes.
84. Being on HBO Max at the same time that it was in theaters, although how many theaters are open, right?
Right.
I kind of felt like it took a step back, and a lot of people really, kind of feel the same way. Like it did not review as well as the first one.
Yeah.
But I'm hopeful, and I'm hopeful because there's a lot of hype behind the Flash movie that they want to do.
Right.
Because they want to do Flashpoint or whatever, which will totally blow up their multiverse, right? So you'll have the Flash in it, but you also have Ben Affleck and Michael Keaton coming back to play Batman in the film.
Mm.
So you have a lot of things in the pot, right? Not to mention you've got the Pattinson version of Batman coming out by Matt Reeves, which looks great. We've seen one trailer so far from the DC fandom last year, but that was when the film had only had like 25% filmed.
Right.
So that first trailer may have nothing to do with the movie. We don't know.
Yeah.
Henry Cavill coming back, possibly. I love Henry Cavill as Superman. He is the embodiment of a corn-fed Kansas boy. Right, but he's got the charm, he's got the look. We obviously saw it when he played The Witcher as well, that he will get himself to look the part. And I don't know. I think that he is a good Superman. Now, after watching I think that one's mine.
Nope. Glad you caught that.
I like you, Shawn, but I don't know if we should be sharing water.
Not on that.
Anyways, after watching the Crisis on Infinite Earths in the DC TV series, I really wish that Brandon Routh had been given another chance as Superman, because in the Crisis on Infinite Earths thing that they did, he was excellent.
Yeah. Like
better than he had been as Superman in 2006 and Superman Returns.
Right.
But now, with them going, hey, we've got this multiverse, we've got this stuff going on. You could have him come back and he could star in another film. And it could be coinciding with another Henry Cavill Superman film. So it's interesting. I don't think that mass audiences are ready for that, though.
Why do you say that?
When I sit there and say there's two Flashes, how does that feel? People already, when they started the TV series Arrow and then introduced the Flash, and then the Flash was in the Justice League movie, they wanted it to be Grant Gustin. They wanted it to be the same Barry Allen, but it's not the same Barry Allen. It's Ezra Miller. But now with this multiverse thing, and in fact, if anybody out there didn't watch those episodes of the DC TV series, in the Flash episode, they actually had Ezra Miller show up. Now, it's only for a quick second.
Yeah. And
in fact, it's the first time they call him the Flash. Like, they never called him the Flash in the Justice League. They never called him the Flash in Batman v Superman.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the first time he's called the Flash. So that's how he got his name. It was a cool moment, and it was the only way that they could tie those two universes together.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they could have tried to do the same thing that Marvel did, which is, we're going to launch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. at the same time that we've got the Avengers movies. We're going to put Agent Coulson in it so that way people are familiar with the main character. But then the entire first season, you had to wait and wait and wait until like the 18th episode of a 22 episode season to sit there and go, Hydra's the bad guy.
Right.
right? Because it had to lead to the Winter Soldier. And
so did you understand, you said wait and wait and wait, but in retrospect, do you understand why it had to be done that way? Or would you have done it differently if we're being honest about it?
So they started to do it differently after that because they realized that even though they had really good ratings at the beginning of the season, ratings really tailed off towards the end of the season. And it really wasn't until like 2 weeks before Captain America Winter Soldier came out that all of a sudden people were interested in the show again because it tied directly into it. Later on, the producers went, we can't do that anymore. We have to establish this as its own thing, because otherwise we're waiting and waiting and waiting for the big reveal every season, and we're just going to lose viewers. And the further it got away from that Marvel Cinematic Universe and made it its own little thing, the better it was. Right. The last 2 or 3 seasons of it were excellent, but yet they weren't watched by anybody because, well, by then the ratings had already dropped. Yeah. But the fact that Disney owned ABC and Disney owns Marvel, they're able to sit there and go, we're going to let it run 7 seasons.
Yeah. All right. Let me run this back.
Sure.
Before because you sort of led into Marvel, and we're going to head there next. And I wanted to keep really the theme of what we were talking about with DC and Marvel, more or less to either TV series and or movies. But I cannot go into Marvel without talking about 3 Jokers. Now, full disclosure for the audience out there, I haven't read it yet. Spoiler alert. So for those who have not read 3 Jokers, who still want to, find out for themselves everything that's going on with that, skip ahead. But you've been warned. So we're going to go ahead and get into that right now. Now, I personally haven't read it, but I've had people tell me that it was okay, but they were ultimately disappointed, particularly by the ending. Like, what happened, man? Why am I hearing that from multiple people?
So we're gonna really go ahead and spoil it.
Let's go.
So the whole series is based on this idea that Jeff Johns, the writer, had created in his Justice League run, where Batman finds out by sitting on something called the Mobius chair, which is an all-knowing thing where he basically, the questions he asks, it gives him all the answers in the universe. Mm-hmm. He asks, who's the Joker? And the answer he's given is there's 3 Jokers.
Okay.
So from that concept, you're sitting there going, what the shit? Like, you're like, okay, this sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
And when you think about the different writers who have written Batman over the years, the Joker acts very differently depending on who's writing. Sometimes he's comical, sometimes he's maniacal, sometimes he's suicidal. He's a little bit of everything. Obviously, he's genocidal and homicidal and all that too. But overall, when you think about the Joker, like, you have specific writers that write him better. Like you and I were talking about Alan Moore and how he wrote The Killing Joke.
Right.
Well, that's one of those Jokers, right? That specific Joker from that was one of them. So the series starts out excellent. Like, they really get you thinking, what are these 3 guys doing? And ultimately what they're trying to do is create the ultimate Batman villain by creating another Joker. And they get this bright idea that what they should do is find Joe Chill, the guy that killed Thomas and Martha Wayne, and make him the Joker. Sounds like a cool concept.
Okay.
But at this point, he's got very little time left to live. He's kind of broken down. And at this point, little to the Joker's knowledge, Batman's forgiven him. So in all of this, he's kind of just been like, because throughout the whole thing, they show how Joe Chill had kind of developed into a nicer human being.
Okay.
And really
he had reformed.
And
had reformed and just moved on. Okay.
And during all of this as well, so he's reformed, but of course now it's either cancer or something that's killing him from the inside, and all this craziness is going on. And during that, you've also got Jason Todd, the Red Hood, right, who died at the hands of the Joker in not The Killing Joke, but A Lonely Place for Death in the Family. Death in the Family is what it's called. And it's because he was a punk kid that nobody liked as the character. Now they brought him back, Lazarus Pit, all this other stuff. Right. Again, folks, comic book jargon that basically means this is how we bring a character back that we think has another story in them.
Yeah.
And in that, Jason Todd kills one of the Jokers. So there's still only 2 Jokers left. Little to be known, the one Joker that was kind of leading the pack of Jokers ends up killing the other Joker, so there's only one Joker left at the end.
Okay.
And it kind of derails itself. You know, the whole story just kind of derails. And at the very end of it, and since we said we're going to spoil it because it's been out for a while now, Batman gets asked by Batgirl, why have you never tried to figure out who he was? And Batman, being the ultimate detective, sits there and says, I've known who the Joker was since the first week I met him.
What?
You heard it. That's your no more mutants moment of the entire thing, is that Batman has always known the identity of the Joker.
Are you serious? So, okay, we said a while ago that we were going to stick primarily to either TV series or movies, but if this was a movie, it would be a pretty good movie throughout with a either at best okay ending, at worst bad ending, is what you're telling me.
A WTF moment, yeah. You know, but a lot of people also think that the Killing Joke had a WTF moment at the end, because Batman starts laughing at everything. You know, because the Joker tells him a joke at the end of it, and Batman actually laughs at the joke.
Yeah, which to me, beyond him laughing at the joke, to me, as far as the Killing Joke is concerned, it really solidifies, for the reader, the fact that, look, at the end of the day, they're adversaries, but they truly need each other. Deep down,
you wouldn't have one without the other.
You wouldn't have one without the other, and they understand each other on a level that you didn't necessarily read and or see before. So in that what the fuck moment, I can understand. What you just described to me with 3 Jokers, help me understand as somebody who's read it or who has not read it. Like, what do you think they were thinking for it to go that way?
So I think originally Jeff Johns has a reason. I think he wants to continue it later, right? And
so this is a cliffhanger of sorts,
kind of,
if you want to call it, whatever. All right.
But it leaves some of it open, right? It definitely does. But at the same time, the reason why people didn't like the end, partly because it's what the fuck moment, right? But the other part of it is that we don't know where this takes place in continuity, if it's in continuity. If it's not in continuity, then I guess it's an okay Batman story. But it started in continuity, and then because DC doesn't know what to do with the continuity, they kind of screwed it up.
Right.
You know, in fact, right now, if you go into a comic book store and you say, hey, I want the new Batman comic, you're going to get one that has Lucius Fox's kid as the Batman. You're not even going to get Bruce Wayne as Batman. Now, there's a second Batman book that has Bruce Wayne in it, but that's because they're trying to diversify their line. They're trying to create the next generation of characters. They're trying to see what sticks when they throw it up against the wall. And I have never understood, Shawn, and this goes into the multimedia side of stuff.
Okay.
Why, if I go to see a Batman movie and I see Bruce Wayne as Batman, right? Why, if I walk into a comic book store, Bruce Wayne isn't Batman? When Iron Man, the movie, came out, they were toying with the idea of a female Iron Man. Captain America, when the first Captain America movie came out, was the Falcon, which now we're seeing they're playing into the story. But if you had walked into the comic shop and said, I want Steve Rogers as Captain America, you can't buy the newest issue. There's a problem with that. Now, granted, comics have to naturally evolve, right? They have to continue the story. They have to have something come up. And that's why the Marvel Universe movies have done so well, because they take that history and turn it into this happened in 2015 instead of 1963, but this is how we've adapted it.
Is it generally, but to continue on your point that I think you may be making here, which is, isn't it generally accepted that obviously Marvel, there's so many more, characters and storylines and everything like that, but just that Marvel has done overall a better job as far as either from a comic standpoint or from a movie standpoint. They've been better written on that side of things than DC. Isn't that the general consensus from people?
Not
Marvel
always.
has been better written than DC, is what I'm saying.
So the common conception there is that the movies, you're absolutely right. Besides the 3 Christopher Nolan films, which are, you know, looked at as, I mean, the second one has Oscar-winning stuff that happened in it, right? Heath Ledger posthumously won the Oscar for that film. And that what it did was it took a dark world that could be real. I mean, you could go to Detroit and possibly have that type of stuff happen to you, right? Where someone ties you up and does all this craziness to you.
Right.
And put a superhero into it, right? And Batman's grounded, so you can ground Batman in that. Besides those 3 films, and arguably the third one, a lot of people didn't like the whole timing of it, whatever. It didn't fully work, whatever the case might be. But those 3 films are typically looked at as this is what makes good DC movies.
Right.
Part of that's why when we got Man of Steel, it was a darker version of it. It's why they put the filter on the cameras and the suit was that really, really dark blue rather than the Christopher Reeve Superman suit, which, by the way, I still argue that the best DC comic book movie ever made was Superman the movie, because it really, you know, when it came out and everything else. Now, granted, you weren't born yet. I was barely born.
What was it? 78?
77 when it came out. In fact, I probably wasn't born. I was born in 77. But when you think about it, that movie really did have the ability to make people think this man, A, is Superman, and B, that a man can fly. You know, it gave that perception. Now you look at Iron Man, you know, Iron Man did the same thing. You believed that Robert Downey Jr. could fly, you know?
Right.
They did it really well. The reason why the Marvel movies work so well is because there's a formula. And they have figured it out, and they have applied that formula to every single film that they have done, and it has worked seamlessly. I mean, they made Ant-Man a household name.
Okay.
They made Star-Lord a household name, Gamora.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because you have seamlessly transitioned into where I wanted to go with this. You know, we covered some DC, we covered 3 Jokers. I'm still confused, but whatever.
We're all confused.
Yeah, right. But you were talking about how the Marvel movies, they follow a formula. They've done, you know, with the possible exception of a few, Iron Man 2, among others.
Or 3.
Yeah.
or Thor 2.
I was actually a fan of 3. I thought 3 was a nice bounce back. So for most people, they'll say 2 was
trash.
All right. Age of Ultron, you know what I mean? Shout out to CJ, Villains and Vinyl. He'll kill that movie any day of the week, twice on Sunday. But generally speaking, Marvel movies have followed a formula, and they've done very well. But as we transition into this next phase, and now we'll bring, you know, since it just debuted, we are taping this on, what is this, January the 16th, 17th. So we just got the first 2 episodes of WandaVision. So as we transition into this new phase, first of all, your general impressions on the first 2 episodes that just dropped for WandaVision, and then just big picture, where we're going with this new phase. Do you think it'll be as strong? How do you feel? So let's start with WandaVision, and then we'll go from there.
So my first question that comes up when I think of WandaVision is, this is supposed to happen after Black Widow was supposed to come out in theaters.
Right.
So that movie didn't happen yet, which also means that whatever the November movie they were supposed to have didn't come out yet. So this show is happening before stuff that may have actually happened before. Now, Black Widow, we're all thinking is going to be in the past and whatever the case might be, which is fine. But if this was supposed to come out after Doctor Strange, then where are we? Right?
Yeah.
Okay. And it makes you think about that because all of those movies got pushed back a full year, and yet these shows had been in development and are now coming out. You know, you've got WandaVision, which by the time it ends, we roll right into Falcon and Winter Soldier, and then we get Black Widow, hopefully in theaters at that point.
We'll see.
By the series, I do think that the reason why they gave us 2 episodes was because people were going to feel like they didn't get enough in the first episode by itself.
Okay.
It was 30 minutes.
Right.
It literally was a sitcom. It was a 50s sitcom. It wasn't. nothing was answered. There were no answers given, so I can't spoil anything.
Right.
But I'm left with more questions than answers. How did they get to suburbia? How, Westview or whatever they're calling the little town. Why is it all of a sudden and just based on casting and everything else, the Monica Rambeau character calling herself Geraldine? Why are these characters all in here? And again, it's Marvel. There's a formula, and they're trying something different. But they've got access to try something different, because if you've already got Disney Plus because you watched The Mandalorian,
right,
you're gonna watch it,
right,
because you're like, man, it's been so long since I've seen a Marvel movie. Now I'm just gonna watch it just because I know the characters. But none of it makes sense, and that's obviously on purpose.
Okay.
It is on purpose as to why it doesn't make sense, because she knows something's up. In fact, one of the Easter eggs that I was looking at, all these different news articles and stuff, and people just sending in Easter eggs from it. It's following tropes of the decades of TV. Mm-hmm. So like in the second episode, they're in two separate beds, but then the beds come together because that says time's passing or whatever. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, it's Wanda's powers pushing the beds together. But I think that was the change from the 50s to the 60s, right? And when all of a sudden you had the Munsters actually, having the Herman Munster and Lily, actually, Lily? Was it Lily?
Right.
His wife, the two of them, all of a sudden were the first TV couple to be in the same bed together. So it's interesting because things like that are happening. But I thought that one of the most interesting ones was every time a character says "damn," something goes on the fritz. And it's because it's breaking a rule of 50s or 60s TV. You couldn't say that word. Right. So there's something going wrong. And we started to see a little bit of the world falling apart and everything by probably episode 2. Some things are suddenly in color, other things aren't in color. Mm-hmm. And you're sitting there going, what's going on here? Mm-hmm. So it's interesting, but it'll be really interesting to see how it leads into Doctor Strange. Because Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, there's that word again. Multiverse.
Do you see that? Do you see Doctor Strange? Do you see that as arguably the most important, piece to this next phase, if done right?
I think that Marvel wants you to think that, but I think at the same time it's because if you notice, there's 2 Marvel movies not on Disney Plus right now, and that's Spider-Man and Spider-Man.
Really?
So, okay. And it's because they're Sony movies, so they would have to come into some sort of agreement to put them on Disney Plus, but they're part of that universe.
They are.
In fact, people look at Far From Home Home as the end of Phase 3, right? So it's
Endgame, yeah.
So it's and it's the aftermath of what happens after Tony. So it really makes you think, and it makes you wonder what's going on with it. It also had a clue into the Secret Wars TV show that's going to be on Disney Plus, starring Ben Mendelsohn and Nick Fury himself, Samuel Jackson.
Yes.
So they've got a lot of moving pieces, and Kevin Feige has proven that he can play with all those pieces and put them in the right spots. What we're finding, though, is certain directors who might have done the first film aren't doing the second film. Like, for example, they're bringing in Sam Raimi to do Doctor Strange now, which I'm okay with. It means Bruce Campbell will be in the movie, so I'm always okay with that.
Okay, all right.
But it's also because certain guys think certain ways, and they obviously would have had to say, here's our direction, this is what we want to do with it. What do you think? And him go, well, this is what I would do here, 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 here. And before you know it, they're sitting there going, you're perfect. Like, who would have thought that James Gunn would have been the perfect guy to do Guardians of the Galaxy, right? Who would have thought that Peyton Reed would have been the perfect guy to do Ant-Man? Now Joe Johnson, when you say, hey, we want to do a 50 style Captain America movie or 40 style Captain America movie, he's the perfect guy for it. He did The Rocketeer. So you've got Jon Favreau, prime example of the perfect director at the perfect moment, right?
Yes.
And you wouldn't have thought that when they made the first Iron Man movie, but now you're sitting there going, man, when's he going to direct a Star Wars film?
Mm-hmm.
Man, and he's done Lion King, he's done, he didn't do Aladdin, but he's using all this technology that makes it so much easier for him to create, almost like what Robert Rodriguez did back in the day with like From Dusk Till Dawn or Sin City,
yes.
or keeping it with the comic book theme. So it's really interesting to see where they're going with a lot of this stuff. But because Spider-Man can't be their most important piece to the puzzle, yes, I think Doctor Strange is the most important piece of the puzzle.
Cool. All right. So we'll actually wrap this segment and this topic up, and we're going to circle back to DC one more time. Snyder Cut, coming up here, was it in March, I believe?
Mm-hmm.
Where are you with that? Are you excited? Are you hopeful? Are you like, okay, I won't hold my breath. I'll see it when I see it. Where are you with that right now? Based on the last trailer that dropped.
Being a comic book geek, I'm going to watch it day one.
Okay.
And I have to. It's just
if you were not a comic book geek, if you were a casual, just movie going, if it's good, I'll watch it, whatever. Would you be excited for it, or would you be like,
So,
especially being it's already it's a hopefully better version of something that's already been out and been released, right? So,
well, hopefully, but it could just be even worse than what was originally released.
Come on, man.
However, I think what it's allowing, and here's where the excitement factor comes in, is we basically went a year without any new programming on TV. Like there were very few Netflix programs that popped. There were very few
now
movies.
There's one popping every week, it seems like.
And now they finally figured out, okay, we're putting the entire cast in a bubble. We're doing all this, like whatever the case might be with all that. So the excitement level comes in with what else is there during that time?
Right.
If nothing else is happening, yeah, I'm excited for it because I like seeing Henry Cavill as Superman. I'm one of the few people that probably likes Ben Affleck as Batman. In fact, the Ben Affleck without sense of humor version, which we all know that Zack Snyder really doesn't know how to throw jokes into anything.
Yeah.
So it could be really big. It could also just be, all right, that was 4 weeks that I'm not going to get those hour and a half,
right.
episodes of because the thing's going to be like 6 hours by the time it's over. Like, who has that much movie?
Yeah.
Although when you look at like the extended cut of Batman versus Superman, you look at it and you go, nobody edited anything out of that. Yeah. Like that movie just wasn't good. And in fact, Zack Snyder's movies have kind of gone down rather than get better, So I don't know. He was given $70 million extra to sit there and put this together.
So let's see what happens. Man. All right. So, this is what I've been looking forward to. I wanted to cover Marvel, wanted to cover DC and get your thoughts, and definitely send your feedback in and let us know what you think, for all our listeners out there. But Becoming Immortal, there was a reason why I chose this as the title for this episode. So we're now going to get into your projects. All right. So listen, man, you've been writing for a long time, but then you took a step back for a while. Then a few years ago, you got back into it. And yeah, we're going to go ahead and highlight everything that you're into. Now we're going to get into that. But I wanted to start with one of your projects in particular, which is, again, the title of this episode, Becoming Immortal. But before we specifically get into that, first of all, what originally inspired you to become this writer, become this, and obviously you're an artist as well. For our audience on the Champions Material YouTube channel that'll be watching this is a Joker piece. This is from The Killing Joke, and this is actually done by today's guest, Rob Potchak. I'll put that up on the camera. High quality. So this man has been doing this and doing this well for a long time. So what originally inspired you to get into art, to get into writing and just creating in general? Like, what was your original inspiration?
Well, first I want to go ahead and say that piece is after Brian Bolland, who is a genius. So that is just a recreation in my style of his original.
Good call out. Good call out. That's what's up. Yeah.
Always want to give credit where credit's due on that stuff.
Absolutely.
When I was like, I don't know, 6 years old, actually probably even younger than that, when my mom gave me finger paints, she sat there and like I couldn't paint, couldn't draw, couldn't do anything. I didn't even paint on the walls or anything. I actually did just get big pieces of paper. And for whatever reason, I always put blue down and then I put a big red S in the center of it. And I was like, Mom, it's Superman. And it was just a blob with a big S in the center, whatever.
Yeah.
And then, like I never liked to read as a kid. I didn't like reading books. I didn't like doing schoolwork. I didn't like doing any of that stuff. And when I was like 12 or 13, I had to have my appendix removed. And my parents, like, they wanted something for me to do while I was in the hospital because we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have, and it's not just because we were poor or anything. There just were no cell phones.
Didn't exist, people. Didn't exist.
You guys do, the younger audience out there does not understand.
No.
Back when you weren't even allowed to bring a calculator in for a math test. Now it's bring your computer. But my parents went into the gift shop and they had a rack of comics and they brought the comics in and I know exactly what comic book was my first comic book ever. It was Amazing Spider-Man number 315. It was Spider-Man versus Hydro Man and it was drawn by one Todd McFarlane.
Wow.
And in fact, having met Todd on multiple occasions, I actually told him the story of how that comic, like my copy of it, I'm amazed that it's still stapled together at this point because how many times I read that issue over and over and wanted to draw and my parents were like, man, he actually wants to read comics. Okay, get him comics. Let him keep reading. Because it was easy to do. And the comics weren't necessarily easy to do, but you could go to like a CVS or something, a pharmacy, and actually they'd have a rack of comics, so you'd be able to buy comic books. So I would anytime I could get my hands on comics, I would read them. My cousin Ted was actually a huge comic book reader. So anytime we'd go and visit his family down in Alabama, like he would have the boxes of comics and he'd be like, yeah, I've been collecting these for like 15 years at this point. So he's got all the stuff that's like the introduction of the Punisher, the introduction of Wolverine. He's got all these old school books. And I'm just like, can I sit down here and read everything? And they're like, I don't know, Ted, it's up to you. And Ted's like, yeah, go ahead, whatever, And before I left, he's like, here, take these with you, and handed me a bunch of comics that I guess he had multiple copies of or whatever. And that kind of really set me on a path, man. Like at that point, when I was like 14, 15, I had some friends in middle school, high school, and loose leaf paper. We would just draw our own comics.
Wow.
I created my character Artie, who's one of the characters in Immortal. When 1986, I was 9 years old.
Wow.
And now today, like I just showed you a piece of art from the upcoming Immortal series, no release date yet, but the upcoming Immortal series, and Artie's a character in that. I'm 43 now. So that character has been around almost 30 years.
Wow.
And it
just stuck with you.
And I just always was like, and I adapted him and I updated him and whatever. And he became a paranormal private investigator. So he basically he was this alien that crash landed on Earth and he became a PI. And, through high school and stuff, I wanted to write comics. There was this thing called Prodigy on the back then internet. AOL ended up taking over. Everybody started jumping to AOL, and I met all these people that wanted to make comics, and I wanted to make comics too. So I started getting together with people that actually had printed real books. And one of them, Chris Crosby, my age, 42, 43, 44, I don't know. His parents let him publish his own comics. So from then on, like if they had a book that they needed finished writing or whatever, here I am 16, 17, maybe 18 years old at that time. And I had published comics out, it was like, and all my friends are sitting there going, man, that's so cool. How did you do that? I just know this guy in California, never met him, and he publishes my books. And then, adulting happened.
Yes, life happened.
And I went through a couple of years of college, kept trying to write books here and there, and they just never took off. Like it just slowed down. Everything just kind of slowed to a crawl. And I think, and we're talking, my first published work was probably 1997. So I was 20 years old probably when it actually got published. 2003, the first book that is now Immortal actually came out. It was called Landis back then because that's the main character's last name. And it came out on Free Comic Book Day, to a lot of people actually really enjoying the book, but then the very next issue that was supposed to come out didn't sell well. So it didn't happen. And I wrote, like I said, I wrote a couple other books through like the 20 aughts, if you will, 2006, 2007 or whatever. And then again, like I said, life happened, adulting happened, got married, got divorced, had to work a day job. And Shawn knew me from that day job. That's how we've known each other for over 10 years now.
Yes.
Is that I was working constantly. And then
but what? Because when
so I'll tell you, I'm getting there. Okay. I know what you're thinking.
All right.
You think I know what you're thinking. Right. What you're thinking is what made me come back.
Yes.
And it's simple. In 2016, I went into the hospital for quadruple bypass surgery.
Yeah.
And
I didn't want to bring that up. I wanted to leave that to you. But
well, I mean, it happened. It was super eye-opening.
Right.
How much stuff got left on the table? How much stuff got left undone? How many dreams didn't get fulfilled? Right. And it made me go, when I came out of that, it was something where it's like, I was stuck at home for 2 months. During that 2 months that I was stuck at home, the same publisher, Chris Crosby, contacted me and said, hey, what do you think about publishing Landis? And I'm like, yeah, of course, I'm cool with it. Is Owen the artist okay with it? Because now it's 15 years old. It's a completely, it is an old story at this point, right? And he goes, well, Owen says he's okay with it, but he's not, and it's because Owen at this point had become an image comic artist on a book called Rat Queens. His Instagram is phenomenal. He does all these little animated things and stuff now. Like super, super talented artist. One of the best talents out there. Like for anybody that wants a comic book artist or a colorist or whatever, he is just phenomenal.
Yes.
And interestingly enough, I know that you're a Venom fan, and the artist that was supposed to take over after him on Landis when it was originally supposed to be published was a guy by the name of Ryan Stegman.
Okay.
Ryan Stegman is most notably known as the artist of Venom.
Oh.
Okay. Right now he's doing a series for Marvel called King in Black, which is actually all about a character called Null, who is basically the king of the symbiotes. Okay. So he let's just say this. He went from a guy who wanted to finish college and was like, hey, maybe I'll do some pages for a comic book series. Oh, that comic series got canceled. Okay, I'll go on to just finishing college, whatever. To now he's the top guy at Marvel in terms of series artists and everything else. It's not. I don't even think it's debatable. The guy is phenomenal. But anyways, that's just a little piece of history. But in 2016, after that whole thing happened, so 2017 now, the publisher comes to me and says, but not only do I want to publish it, but I want to publish it as if it were a 90s nostalgia comic. So we want to take all the same art that was already done and use it.
Yeah.
But I want you to rewrite the entire script.
Yeah.
Now, at this point, I hadn't written anything in like 10 years, besides social media posts and things like that. So I'm like, yeah, I can do that. Taking it on, like not realizing what I was coming into here. And the first issue went pretty well, I felt. And I realized that as I went on with it, I was like, man, like, I want to do this again. I just want to get involved with
whatever that it is. It came back to you. And
the story, I thought, like, because I went back and I read the original script and I was like, what was I thinking?
Right.
Like this would be so much better if I just did this. And I threw in all these 90s references for things because it being a 90s thing, like I'm sitting there throwing wrestling jokes in there because I'm a pro wrestling fan. I'm sitting there throwing, like, oh, you mean when Hulk Hogan went bad? That kind of, like, those kind of jokes.
Heel turns, yeah.
The fact that when they're pulling out a cell phone, it's a little flip phone, and they're sitting at, and it was just fun to look back and think about things that happened in the 90s and think about it from like a 30-something-year-old's perspective of looking back on what it was like back then.
Okay.
So like I said, lots of references. Like if the book was supposed to be in 1997, I was sitting there looking up like what was the hit song in that time, so that way if a song's playing in the background or whatever, you could actually see the lyrics for a 97 song. That kind of stuff. That like, it really made it fun because it was all about Easter eggs and things like that.
Right.
And then from there, the publisher was basically like, Rob, I'll tell you what, like Immortal started really well. By the end, we finished the first series, but it really tailed off towards the end in terms of popularity and things. But I've learned a lot since then.
Yes.
And you and I talk about like marketing of your show and marketing of like the champions material, like gear and stuff like that, and how to actually like get that into people's minds, get it into their eyes and stuff like that.
Yes.
And that's kind of what I do now. Like I make sure that comic shops know about my stuff before it comes out. And I even throw them like snippets and stuff. I throw them pieces of art. I throw them like 4 or 5 page samples so that they can see everything. And it's not just
establishing the awareness of what's going on ahead of time. Yes.
How to order it, right. Where to order it, what the cost of it is. Do you need any marketing materials that I can send over PDFs and you print them out yourselves, that kind of stuff. And it's really helped just about every other book that I've worked with. I worked on, I edited a book called The D Ward last year for my buddy Billy Parker, who worked on my other book, Junior High Horrors, with me. Now I'm editing a book called Ninjas and Robots for a really talented artist named Eric Klaus. And because I'm working on their books with them, I'm doing the same marketing stuff and everything for them. Now with I have another book called Junior High Horrors.
Yes.
It's the first ever comic book that has dyslexia-friendly fonts in it. So,
what made you think of that? What made you think of that? I mean, first of all, that's, you know what I mean?
I didn't. Okay. I can't take credit for it.
Okay.
It wasn't the publisher either, because he was not a fan of it at the beginning. He's accepted that it's a thing for that book now.
Yeah.
But if you're a comic book reader and you see different fonts all the time, it really hurts your eyes, because it's just daunting to see 2 different fonts in the same book or whatever. So you really want to keep it, the role of letterer, and what makes a great letterer, like Russ Wooten, my friend from way back, what makes a great letterer in a comic book is when you don't even notice that it takes up any space in the artwork, but you're able to read the whole book, it sucks to have it be that you're at the top of your game when no one talks about it. So, but what made me think of it was my sister, who is a Girl Scout troop leader, said, "Hey, we've got a couple kids in the group that are dyslexic. You ever thought about using these different fonts?" So I talked to Billy, who was working as the letterer on the book, and I said, "Think we can switch to it?" And he said, "Yeah, as long as I can download the fonts, it's not a problem." Because comic book fonts you have to pay for.
Okay.
So if you don't pay the licensing fee for them, similar to just about anything else like Dolby Vision or anything else out there, you can't use it. Right. So we looked it up, and there's actually a font called the Open Dyslexic font. It's open source, so it's free to use. So we threw it in. People sat there, and like comic shops, the feedback that I got from them was like, "Dude, this is awesome." So I started creating.
So the response has been positive as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Junior High Horrors is an all ages book.
Okay.
So it's really meant for ages 6 and up. So when you think about like kids that may be dyslexic, trying to learn how to read is probably really daunting and really challenging for them.
Right.
So having them have a comic book that they would be able to pick up, look at, and read, or hopefully read better, it's something that really makes sense to throw it into that all ages, younger audience type thing. Whereas the whole idea behind junior high horror is just taking your favorite icons of horror, turning them into 12-year-old kids with their own personalities, and living the life of 12-year-olds. So they're not killers or anything like that, but you can obviously see the inspirations of the characters, and that's on purpose. Because then we get to draw with the covers, where the covers are actually like former homages to the movie posters. So you have a Nightmare on Elm Street poster, but it's actually Frederick the Cat. And the whole reason why was because at one convention I went to very early on this new path of trying to write and create comics.
Right.
A really talented, super smart guy by the name of Hoyt Silva said to me, "Rob, you need to figure out a way to get outside of these four walls. Because at a comic book convention, you have 100 people claiming to be comic book creators, right?
Yeah.
And everyone is trying to sell a comic book. So I got the idea of, so I'll create something that can also be looked at as horror, and then I can do horror conventions. And then I could, possibly, do different things that aren't in those same four walls. Because if I go to a horror convention, think about it. If I go to a horror convention, suddenly I'm not just one of 1,000 different comic book creators in San Diego. I'm one of 3 comic book creators at a horror convention. And having it be all ages, how much all ages stuff is available at a horror convention? Probably not a lot.
Right.
But when you have parents walking up with their kids and their kids are like, "Mommy, that's a comic book with Jason on it." It's not Jason. His name's JV. He looks very similar to your favorite, Friday the 13th character.
Right.
But the idea there was create new audiences. And people that want to get into comic books that don't want to bring new people into the field and bring new people into the audience aren't doing the job correctly.
Okay.
Just like another one of my pastimes is playing video games, right? Nintendo constantly doesn't beat to the same drum as everyone else. They always try to create a new customer. And when the DS came out, originally it was, we want to get one in each household.
Right.
After they did that, which in Japan I think they did, it was, we want to get one in every kid's hands. Then it was, we'll create a bigger one so that we get one in everyone's hands.
Yes.
And what did they do? They kept creating new customers. The Nintendo Wii, same thing, create new customers. So when I started thinking about the dyslexia-friendly font, I was thinking about it as, here are 20% of the population sometimes suffers from this disability, and they probably don't walk into a comic book store because nobody's catering to that. Now, the dyslexia-friendly font does nothing to hurt you from being able to read it if you're not dyslexic. It just helps those that are dyslexic be able to differentiate the letters better.
Yes.
So it helps them read the book in a way that should alleviate some of the stress of trying to learn how to read when you're moving letters around backwards, forwards, upside down, anything like that.
Yeah.
So it really became something that like I was very motivated by, and it was because comic books, sales might be up year over year or whatever, but they're really kind of a dying brand.
No.
Buying anything in paper just doesn't seem to, like there's talks out there, Marvel, DC, we'll just license our characters out and let other people make the comics of them because it costs us so much money to do that. Like talks about it. Not sure if anybody will ever do it, but
it's out there.
But it's out there. So if I want to be a comic book creator, I need to figure out a way to create new audiences. So trying to bring the horror people in to read my comic is one way to try to create a new audience. And it seems like a natural blend, right? Just like video games and comic books, or for some reason, comic book readers and wrestling watchers, they seem to have a blend. They seem to have matching audiences in a lot of cases, but some of them might not buy comics. They just, I really like Thor. Okay. Well, now, if you're into horror stuff, you may actually come into a comic book shop to pick up our book.
Yeah.
So it's trying to create multiple new avenues for people to come into a comic book shop and buy the books. And then, of course, trying to get on things like Comixology Unlimited, so that way, if you just have that subscription from Amazon, you're able to read all your comics, and Immortal's on there, Junior High Horrors is on there. A couple of my parody books like Dead Sonja and Ex Liefelds are on there.
Mm-hmm.
So like my entire library is, if you're already paying that subscription fee, you can read all my books. There. So yeah, it's pretty awesome, man. If you would have asked me 6 years ago, hey, you think you'll ever go back and write more comics? I'd have been like, yeah, maybe. You never know. Like there's always a story, right? Well, now I've got a new Immortal series that I'm working on.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a Junior High Horrors book that's not only coming out probably early February,
mm-hmm.
but then I also have the collected edition of the first 6 issues fully redone with the dyslexia friendly font. And we're even redrawing the first issue of the book of Junior High Horrors,
mm-hmm.
so that when it comes out in bookstores, it's a whole new edition. And it comes out in bookstores in July. So
and these would be, when you're saying bookstores, primarily we're talking like, comic.
No, we're talking Barnes and Noble. We're talking Walmart, Amazon,
okay.
Target. Anywhere that sells books, you can get it. All
right, that's important. Y'all heard that out there at Champions Material. Anywhere books are sold, you can find.
They can, as long as they have what they call the ISBN number, which is kind of like the number that you order the book from.
Right.
If you have that number, you go into like a Barnes and Noble right now, you can order the book for pickup in July.
Yes.
But that made me think of something else. Here I have an all ages book. Here I have the first all ages book with dyslexia friendly fonts. What's a place that you normally pick up books from?
Bookstore.
Well, there's another one though. There's a big one. It's called a public library.
Okay. Oh, well, okay. All right.
So bookstores can return books if they're not sold after a while.
Yeah.
But why would a public library? Right? So from the perspective of trying to sell a book and actually make money off of it, which ultimately, if you're not trying to make money off your stuff, hopefully you're a nonprofit, right? But I do kind of want to make this into a living, so I do want to see some scratch from it at some point. Right. So libraries don't send the books back if they don't sell, because they're not selling them.
No.
So do you know how
books are there for consumption? Yeah.
Do you know how many libraries there are in the United States, Shawn? How about 117,000 libraries?
No.
In the U.S.
in
alone.
2021, in the U.S. alone, 117,000 libraries?
Yeah.
Shit. Excuse me.
So think about that. If I were to get every one of those libraries to order one copy of my book, I'd be on the New York Times bestseller list.
See, thinking outside the box. Ladies and gentlemen, thinking outside the box. So it's not just thinking outside the box when it comes to, Junior High Horrors, Immortal. It doesn't matter, whatever project, but also thinking outside the box as far as the audience that you can cater to. He just talked about the dyslexic friendly crowd. Something that that's not thought of often. Frankly, I hadn't heard of that until he just mentioned it, right? So you got to think outside the box as far as, what you're doing. Also think outside the box as far as how to be able to market, promote, buy, and sell, what you're working on. So yeah, man. And I also wanted to touch on this as well. On top of everything else you're doing, the Potty and Tino show. Let the people know, man. The Potty and Tino show. Let the people know about that.
So, all right. So Monday nights, my buddy Tino, who I've actually known longer than you, I've known him for, we can't seem to figure if we put an actual date on it, but over 20 years.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So yeah. And we always say that I met him about the time I started drinking. So about the time I turned 21, right? So probably about 20 to 22 years ago. And I used to do a podcast with a buddy of mine named Ward, and Ward didn't want to do the podcast anymore. So Tino said, "Hey man, I'll step in. I'll do it." I was like, "Are you going to commit to every week? Are you going to commit to, doing the show?"
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, if you're there, I'm there. The only time I won't be is if I'm sick, if I'm on vacation, whatever. Okay, cool. So for the last, at least most of 2020, we were doing the show every week. I think we missed 2 or 3 weeks just because like there was audio difficulty or the internet's down. Like there was a day where my internet was down for the entire day. We couldn't do the show. Right. I was on vacation at one point, so we didn't do an episode then. But otherwise, what we talk about pro wrestling.
Okay.
Okay. However, the difference between what our show does and what most other shows do when they're pro wrestling shows is we talk about us. You know, and it is a huge difference because you have to have a hook, right? And you know, yours in some cases is boxing. Like you open your season with boxing, you do at least one boxing episode every season, you know, and it really, I mean, it's eye-opening to a person who barely understands the world of boxing. You put it in perspective and make me go, man, I should probably pick up one of those pay-per-views at some point. But you know, at the same time, like we talk about us. So Tino is a musician in the local Raleigh-Durham area. So 2020 was hard on him because when everything shut down, bars shut down, restaurants shut down, everything like that, Tino wasn't doing extra anymore. And that's one of the ways that he supported his family. He's a paid musician.
Yes.
You know, obviously the comic book world, Shawn, I probably had more conventions lined up for 2020 than I've ever lined up for not just myself, but other people that I help represent. And we were gonna have, you know, tables similar to what you've got set up here. We're gonna have giant banners behind us, do the whole 9 yards. My Christmas present for my parents last year was brand new banners for my comic books. So when I go to conventions, I've got brand new, you know, backer boards that, you know, really highlight what I'm working on at that point.
Right.
And none of that happened, right? So the world took a step back. You and I were talking about this with other like-minded people, you know, and how they took a step back because they didn't understand the hustle. You know, that's why I know that there's 117,000 libraries out there. You know, now I'm trying to figure out how do I contact all of them, right? But at the same time, I'm also thinking with the Potsy and Tino show, how do we reach a different audience than other wrestling shows? And I would say that probably 70% of our viewers on YouTube are not wrestling fans. And the reason why is because the first half of our episode, we do a segment called What's Up With You? And that's it. Tino tells me what happened in his week. I tell him what happened in my week. And a lot of times there's always a funny story. Like at this point, I'm telling stories about my former employer and what used to happen, like what caused this. Like I've got a really good one for this week. So I'll tell you the next episodes of the Potsy and Tino show are going to have some really funny former employer stories.
Some anecdotes.
I mean, they're good too. It's like you and I will probably talk about it after the episode here's over, but you know, I gotta sell the brand, right?
Yes.
So we talk about us though. So like if I have a new comic book project coming up, I talk about that. If I have a new article coming out on a website, because right now I'm working with a group called Mainframe Comic-Con and I've started a weekly written article for them. So now, you know, that's going to be something we talk about. When I was doing the Junior High Horrors coloring book Indiegogo crowdfunding program, talked about it every week, you know, gave away free stuff, you know, and that's the kind of thing that, but Tino and I, having known each other for 20 something years, our rapport is very similar to what you and I've got. You know, do we always agree on stuff? No, but that makes it more interesting because if we don't agree on something, then, you know, it's calamity ensues and it just makes the episode that much better.
Nice.
And then the second half of the episode, we recap basically what happened in the world of pro wrestling, but we put it into a way that people that don't necessarily watch pro wrestling understand it better.
Right.
And in fact, that's what my new article at Mainframe is all about, the gorilla position. It's all about like teaching people like the terminology of the wrestling and why it's important, why if you start watching it, you hear about ratings and why it's this and why it's that. And it's, you know, it's really done in a way that novices can pick it up.
Right.
but experts will understand that there is huge nuggets of detail in there that they can pick up as well.
It's good stuff, man. And actually, to your earlier point, as far as me and my passion for boxing, which has stuck with me since I was a kid. Um, as a younger man, wrestling was definitely at the forefront for me. I definitely was a big wrestling fan. But as you mentioned earlier, once adulting happened and once life happened, I would say I would say the mid 2000s is when I kind of fell back. So once the Stone Colds and the Rocks, and then my all time guy Mick Foley, once they kind of they went from being regulars to doing appearances. I just kind of went on with life and everything. But we'll definitely get into it in another episode. We'll get into really just where wrestling is right now, and just will it ever come back to being what it was in its heyday when we're going 80s, 90s, maybe even mid 2000s. That'll be something that we'll have to do another time, man. But definitely just wanted to highlight that show and just let the people out there know that you got that going on as well and what to tune in. So all right. So on that note, man, just want to thank you for coming through Champions Interior, man. This was a long time coming. This was fun, man. So before we get out of here, let the people out there know where they can find you, where they can find all things tied to your projects, Potty and Tino, the whole nine. The floor is yours, man.
All right. So let's go ahead and start with Facebook, facebook.com/Rob Potchak or facebook.com/Potsy and Tino Show.
Mm-hmm.
You can check out both of those there. Immortal the Comic, facebook.com/Immortal the Comic. You can actually keep up with the comic there. Facebook.com, Junior High Horrors, same thing. If you just search any of those properties, you'll see it. Instagram, Immortal the Comic, and it's spelled just the way it said, Immortal the Comic, Junior High Horrors. So Instagram, if you guys follow that stuff, please, would love the follows. I'm on Instagram as Rob Potchak, so you can follow me. YouTube, youtube.com/Rob Potchak. That's Potchak, just so everybody knows. Twitch, Rob Potsy Potchak. So any of those places you can find me. Twitter, I'm just at Potchak. So by all means, I would love to have new followers, subscribers, whatever the case might be. Don't subscribe on Twitch for me. If you want to follow, that's fine. I don't want people paying $5 to see me possibly stream once a week. So, but the subs on YouTube, would love them. And that's the quickest and easiest way to figure out what's going on with my projects. I do a lot of sketch cards. You've probably seen them on my Instagram.
Did a Gambit one for me, man. Still love that one.
The just recently, I was on Facebook the other night and I said, I'm bored. Give me some cartoon characters or some comic book heroes that you want me to draw. And before you know it, I was sitting there doing, and I mean, I did probably 10 sketch cards in about 2 hours.
Goodness.
So and it was really just, I love doing 10-minute sketches, so but with sketch cards, I'm sitting there coloring them in, doing all that stuff, posting them on Instagram. But and anybody that wants to buy them after they give the suggestion, you just got to message me and you can buy it off of me. It's normally $10, but I mean, they're trading cards. If somebody wants something like what you see here, you just got to message me, ask what the going rates are. If you say that you saw me on Champions Material, probably get the Champions Material discount on that.
Yeah.
You know how we roll.
Yeah. All right. So you can find this man anywhere and everywhere. And before I, close this thing out, man, special shout out to a longtime supporter and friend of ours out there in Hawaii, Robert Blout. Rob, what's going on, man? Definitely, I'll have you on at some point, and just had to shout you out, man. Appreciate the support. You supported this man. You supported me. And much love to you out there, man. You stay safe. You and your wonderful wife, man. All right. Appreciate everybody out there for tuning in. As always, you can find Champions Material on Facebook, IG, Instagram, Twitter, and the official Champions Material YouTube channel. Feel free to send any ideas, any feedback. As always, to champions.materialsv@gmail.com. And as I mentioned on last week's show, the Champions Material Discord channel community, it is now live. That's our community. It's a place where we can get together, where I can get to know you all, you get to know me. I'm really looking forward to building that community, putting faces and personalities to all the people who take the time to support this show. Definitely get in there, check us out. Again, as I mentioned on last week's show, Discord is totally free. It's a safe space for all of us. For those of you out there who are already on Discord, look for me. I'm Shawn V 6172. My profile pic is the Joker. And as I mentioned on last week's show, if you're unfamiliar with Discord and how to get set up, don't worry about it. I got you covered. I broke all of that down on episode 1, last week's episode, at about the 47-minute mark. So so check out that show. Go to about the 47-minute mark, and I'll break it down for you. Real simple, real easy. Looking forward to having you on there. Let's make that happen. And on that note, we're going to get up out of here. But before we do, never forget, whoever you want to be and whatever you want to be, always be the champion of it. That's Champions Material. Now stay tuned. We'll be back sooner than later with our next episode. For now, me, Rob Potchak, we're done. My man. Long time coming, man. Thank you, brother.
Of course.